And it's a big welcome to Domain Managing Editor Alice Stolt. So good to have you in here today. We are talking about school zones today. School fees can be a massive hit to your bank account, as we all know, but people are sort of wising up to that now. And there are some really good public schools out there where it might be cheaper for you to buy or perhaps rent in a school zone rather than forking out those exorbitant school fees. What do you reckon?
It's become sort of the topic du jour at the moment. I think public schools are really the big next thing in property, basically, and people are now thinking, I want to buy in an area with a great school in the catchment. So much so that if you go to domain.com.au, you can actually search by file listings in the catchment of your choice. Because, you know, in the olden days, we always sort of look at Melway maps and sort of put them over where the listings were, but now we've actually got an optionality where you can do that because there's such an appetite to be in sought-after school zones and potentially save yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions of dollars if you've got multiple children, in school fees.
So what are some of the top public schools that people are trying to get into around the country? Because there must be a few.
Yeah, basically in each state we know there are certain ones that are highly desirable.
Yeah.
In Victoria, it's the McKinnon Secondary School College, which was last year ranked 8th in the state. In Queensland, Mansfield State High is one of the basically in the top two public schools in the state now. And you look at this school in SA, Glenunga International High School, it's now Adelaide's one of the most elite schools, and it offers the International Baccalaureate and things like that, you know, and bilingual programs, which were traditionally saved for independent schools, are now becoming so sought after that government schools are now offering them.
So it's not so much just following the school ties and go where your parents went now. You know, for your individual kids too, there might be different schools that suit your different children. But I guess there's the point of if you buy in one of those catchment areas, you're making money because obviously the property is going to increase over time as well. So rather than putting it all into school fees, you might actually be making some on the other end.
And I think when you've got multiple children, people look at that sort of, you've got children at school for 13 years. Think of when you crunch those numbers of what you're saving a year, it's absolutely astronomical. And I think also though that as schools get better and better and affordability becomes more and more challenging for people, it's like, am I right parking my money in that area?
Do people try and cheat the system at all? Do they try and get in there around the back door and say, hey, I'm living here, but actually they're renting somewhere else? Or does that happen still?
We hear terrible examples of that, basically. It's now parents are going to extreme lengths by sort of saying they're living in an abode which has the right address for the school catchment zone, which actually doesn't. And there is just huge demand for sought-after schools doing that, to the point that basically in Queensland, an investigator had to come in to uncover families who were rorting the system. It was getting so extreme that the in-laws were living in that house and they were saying that the children were living there, and of course they actually weren't. But I also think the thing to be sort of wary about at the moment is that schools or governments will change catchment zones as they please. So we hear a little bit about people buying into a particular school zone, and then in the death of night one day, a council or government can actually change that catchment zone. So that is something to bear in mind. If you're sort of on the outer edge of a zone, as schools become more and more popular, you really need to think about, am I as close to that school as possible? And I know, you know, lots of cases where basically siblings may be at a school and once upon a time that would sort of give you a guaranteed spot for your next child. But literally you need to be living in that zone continuously these days.
It's an interesting one as well because there is this thing between public or private education, and we're at a tipping point now, I reckon, with property prices being so expensive that people who may have traditionally chosen to go down a private route will now go, I want to get a really good public education. Is there any data that shows that prices are being lifted in those good public school areas?
Yes, anecdotally, absolutely, and you'll see definitely, and people can find this out themselves. You can basically see across the road, property prices will drop quite considerably if you're just outside a catchment zone. But you know, I think to me it's all about having optionality when you're buying a house. You know, I've got 3 young girls, and we deliberately bought in a suburb with a fantastic school zone. And when I feel like we've always got options now. That should we never need to change, or we want to be able to have other options for our daughters, we've actually got that. And I think that's so important that when you buy a house, particularly when you're just starting a young family, it all seems such an abstract thought to think about education. And then it hits you. Sure, you're probably the same. It hits you before you know it. You're suddenly sending them to school and thinking, gosh, did I buy that house in the right zone to have options when it comes for education?
And it might be now on your sale board, mightn't it? 4 beds, 3 baths in this catchment zone.
Without a doubt. And schools in highly desirable, the ones we mentioned earlier in particular, will make a very big difference come auction day. And just to get that sort of heat of people wanting to be in it.